Hi, welcome back, everyone. I hope you did enjoy that session with Jay and Kundan on voluntary carbon markets. These are markets that, of course, are meant to help transition to us to a sustainable world. And for some business models in clean tech startups, it may not support everyone, but for those that do, I hope Jay gave some guidance for where there could be promising carbon market revenues that you could tap, and some guidance of when to tap, etc. These markets will continue to grow. That's something that we have seen, as interest from other players, especially private corporates, start to take up increasing purchase of carbon credits globally. We also have another market that some of you may have heard of called the REC market. Here in India, it came out about, I think, roughly 10 years ago, especially as solar came up, the renewable energy certificate market, with perhaps mixed results here, as it requires a lot of coordination between many agencies. But nonetheless, there seems to be growing interest in this tool across the world. And we're fortunate to have Ashish here, Kumar from Shell Foundation, to talk to us about this market, REC market, as well as some of the exciting stuff that Shell Foundation is doing. Now, a little bit about Ashish. I just found out that we also went to the same college, so I'm very happy. Ashish is the climate and innovation lead at Shell Foundation, an alumnus of IIT Roorkee, as well as a graduate from Oxford University. He's an expert in climate tech, climate finance, circular economy, and a whole bunch of other stuff in this space. And he leads programs related to early stage startup funding, for example, like blended finance, venture building, product service, and design. I won't go too much more into what Ashish is going to talk about, because he's, of course, a better place to do that. But first, I'd like to thank you, Ashish, for your time. We have an audience of clean tech entrepreneurs, startups, as well as aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to see where the opportunities are for startups, not whether the space requires innovation or technology, or even just entrepreneurship, risk-taking, things to be built to make these tools, products, and markets work. I'll leave it over to you now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Pratap, Joey, and team for setting this up and bringing together so many entrepreneurs and practitioners to talk about some of these forward-looking initiatives, innovations. As you've already introduced, hello everyone from London, from bright and sunny London for a change, and I'm very excited to be sharing with you some of the work we have been doing in this REC renewable energy certificates market. For that, I will just try to share some slides I have. Let me try now. Can you guys see? Pratap, maybe you can confirm if it's visible.
Yes, it's visible, Ashish.
Super, thanks. Essentially, what we are trying to do here is create a customized market instrument, just as we heard a lot on the carbon credit side. There's a parallel market, as Pratap was hinting towards, called RECs, Renewable Energy Certificate. And within that market, we are trying to create a more customized instrument called distributed RECs, Distributed Renewable Energy Certification. That's the whole program name. And the reason behind that is because we have realized that, the way the REC market is growing, there's huge opportunity for a number of both, renewable energy generators, developers, startups, to monetize the, environmental attributes that they are, that they're producing, other than the electrons itself. So I'll come to that, why we are doing and how in the subsequent slides. But fundamentally, what I want to leave you guys with is that it's a sort of a new customized instrument that we are wanting to introduce. So to get to that, let me just try to see if I can. Okay. So this slide, you basically see a huge bunch of logos of all the global corporates, brands that you would have come across. I wouldn't play a quiz here asking like what's common among all these logos or brands, but I'll just give you the answer. Basically, all of these have one thing in common, which is they have all signed up for something called RE100 or Renewable Energy 100. Essentially, that means that they want to source all of their electricity consumption that they have either in their direct consumption in their buildings, in their offices, in their factories, warehouses, in their supply chain by 100% renewable energy electricity, which is a huge ambitious climate pledge of sorts. RE100 is like a group that's been created. However, many of these corporates, it's like a aspirational goal. They will be getting there. And what I'm trying to cover here is the demand side of the environmental market. Just as in carbon credit, you may have heard who are the buyers. Many of these could be buyers in the REC market. So just wanted to give you a sense who all is involved. Within the RE100, you time and again come across a number of news announcements like Apple commits to 100% carbon neutral in the supply chain by 2030, or Microsoft will be carbon negative by 2030. What does that actually mean? That essentially, comes down to how they are procuring their sources of, electricity consumption, and from different sources. If you are imagine if you're a big corporate, you may be buying those PPAs or power purchase agreements or electricity from different sources. So it could be from the state supplied, utility. Some of them could be RE. Some of them could be from the usual thermal power plants. There is only to a certain extent you can go in terms of sourcing those. And as you see in this whole chart, at the bottom left, that within that whole RE100 pledge of sorts, what are the different stages? 0.4%, as you can see, have committed to 100% powering by now, whereas 100 companies are have reached 8% almost, and gradually over time, 40 to 50%, the goal is to have 100% of their electricity consumption by renewable energy. And this all represents in total 10 to 15% of the global CO2 emissions. So we are talking sizable sort of effect in the emissions if we achieve this. If the corporates or any financial institutions want to reduce their carbon footprint using renewable energy sourcing. So with that backdrop on the demand side of the market, let me tell you a bit more on what is the actual footprint that we are talking about. Some of you may have seen this famous slide from the GHG protocol, which talks about different types of footprints, the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 is direct, what is the electricity consumption at your company facilities and vehicles, or direct use. Scope 2 is for any of in your sort of warehouses, or any heating and cooling you're doing in your direct infrastructure that you have. Whereas scope 3 is when you talk about anything from business travel to leased assets or transportation, supply chain. And what you heard on the carbon market side, a lot of time carbon market is used for scope 3 emissions. Whereas within scope 1 and 2, there are alternatives like REC market, which is growing and which is also used. So this is again fundamentally, it's very useful when you look at anything about carbon footprint reduction from the buyer perspective. It's useful to situate it within what you're talking, and there are different sort of clauses or protocols, what you can do within scope 1, what can be counted as scope 2, what are the boundary conditions, geographical limitations. So it's just a useful sort of framework for everyone, for you to learn while talking carbon footprints. And I put this slide just especially because you have just been hearing about carbon offsets, carbon market. So here you just see the difference between a carbon market and the REC market. the crucial thing to highlight is that, top row, a carbon offset represents 1 ton of CO2 being offsetted. Okay, it's a clear additionality claim that you have to make, that you have to prove, as maybe Jacomar and his colleagues were highlighting, that how would you prove that additionality? Whereas REC is a bit more simplified market. Here, you are just claiming 1 megawatt hour of electricity produced, clean electricity produced. So you're not having to claim that additionality of, okay, are you offsetting CO2 or not? However, I mean, every corporate or every buyer is interested in that story. So, but it's not as, the whole process is not as complex or cumbersome as compared to carbon offset. And then as I highlighting, like, in terms of scope applicability, REC is more applicable to 1 or 2, whereas carbon offset can be used for 1 and 3. You have different standards bodies in the voluntary, like you would have heard of gold standard Vera in carbon market context. Similarly, you have IREC, TIGR, GREENI in case of REC. So yeah, this was just to give you a little bit of highlight on how those markets are different. So with that overview, what I wanted to also share is a bit of current challenge we are seeing and why we are thinking we need to do a bit more in the REC market. So many of you might be familiar with the energy access market challenge. There's more than 800 million population across the world, who still don't have access to energy or electricity. So we are talking about like rural communities in Africa or in India who have very, like, government claims 100% renewable energy, 100% electrification, but a lot of time you only have just few hours of supply. So it's very unreliable electricity, although maybe the transmission and distribution has been established. So energy access is a huge challenge. We all know. We also know the financing need for energy access is quite a bit of challenge, and we need newer climate finance or market instrument like this to sort of unlock new forms of capital from these environmental markets and beyond, to address that market challenge. The second is, in terms of corporate procurement, the ones I was talking just now, in terms of all these, more than the RE100 companies, more than 300 companies have signed up for that pledge. Here, it's a old slide where we say 200. All of them, has been primarily focused on North America and Europe, all these, renewable energy procurement. And we do know the scope 2 and scope 3 emissions are difficult to address. So with these challenges in mind, we thought, what is the way to link? Maybe this slide gives you a bit more on the how is the REC market growing. On the graph here, you see the voluntary procurement for renewable energy has been growing substantially over the last many years. In 2019 alone, we have 19 gigawatt of renewable energy being sourced or procured by these corporates, the ones you saw earlier in the slide. And what we wanted to do is link that upcoming demand on renewable energy procurement to the supply, especially coming out of emerging markets. So it could be any, sort of climate tech venture or any kind of renewable energy developer who, through this particular instrument that we are designing called distributed REC, can link to the growing demand that you see here on this graph. So that is one of the fundamental idea that we have, and what the instrument we are introducing is called distributed REC, which is working on top of the existing REC framework, REC standards established by the standards bodies like IREC. And what we are saying DREC stands for is like a third-party, verifiable, tradable market instrument that can mobilize new sources of capital for the distributed renewable energy markets, especially in the emerging economies, where we see a huge need for new types of financing. We have done quite a bit of modeling to see, okay, the pricing of DREC could be a bit more premium as compared to the existing REC pricing that you see. And because of the social impact it may be possible to bring. And in that context, we will have, project economics improving anywhere from 6% to 13%, especially this was for a mini grid context. And behind this, we have, I'll just skip to specific slides where, I also talk about there's a tech platform we are developing. I wanted to show, So essentially, in order to implement this distributed rec, we are developing a tech platform on a blockchain-based, ledger, energy purpose ledger, which is called EWF, Energy Web Foundation. I don't know if any of you come across. So they have developed this, customized platform to an adapt called Origin, where they're already doing rec-based transactions for utilities. And what we want to do is sort of use their existing rec platform to kind of create another registry for distributed recs, working with the IREC body, standards body. So this is one component of what we are trying to do on the tech side. Then there's, I'll just leave you with also give you a highlight of this, different types of commercial transactions we are exploring. So we are looking at a market intermediary where you can have corporates or buyers on one side, where you can have, project developers or, ventures, climate tech ventures who are generating renewable energy on the other. And then you can have investors coming in on as well. So if you are aware of like the blended finance structures, this could also go into that realm. Like additional DREC revenue, just like in carbon credit, could help improve the project economics or improve the commercial viability of your service that you're offering. And in that process, you can attract new investors as well. So that's another very high level highlight of some of the commercial models we are exploring. I think, I would like to open it up for more Q&A, because I would like to hear how it could be useful for the audience we have here. So I'll just end with saying that we have specific pilots we are designing at the moment, looking at technical pilot, and we are working on a demonstration and commercial pilot which is focused on let's say electrifying health clinics in Uganda. And we have like matured pilot now, and we are talking to a buyer also. So there are transactions coming along the way as well. So it's not just at the concept stage, we are quite close to implementation. So yeah, right. I'll stop there and for Q&A.
Great. No, this is great. It's amazing. Maybe I could ask Ashish to stop screen share.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is quite exciting because the rec market was really supporting utility scale because of size. VCM doesn't really touch so much renewables as much except in renewable projects, solar cooking stoves and other products maybe.
Yeah.
So I do have a question just from my own understanding. The old recs, at least in India, were a market, a commodity market. A rec is a rec. While the VCM market today is enveloped with stories. For example, a clean cooking stove has a different price than another type of carbon credit. Now, you had mentioned something that was interesting, that there's a preference for emerging markets, which suggests their stories will matter. But how will the pricing work? Do the corporates decide the price based on the type of project, or?
Yeah, a very good question. So, I mean, that's where it becomes similar to the carbon credit market. As you know, like charismatic carbon sort of, tag that was for, highly sort of premium carbon in a way. Similarly, I have an example to give of a live transaction that has happened in a similar instrument called PREC, PREC guys, where I think one of the corporates, Microsoft or Google, they bought it for a implementation in DRC Congo. And the pricing of that, I can't disclose the exact amount, but it was way higher than the GO's governance or guarantees of origin or the existing rec, which is just like maybe at $1 or $0.1. So it's many-fold higher, because there was a same story. They were electrifying streets streets in DRC Congo, and PREC it's called, and in that case they managed to charge much higher. So the story will still be relevant. The pilot we are exploring is electrifying health clinics in rural Uganda through UNDP and other colleagues. So, there would be those specific pilots where you have very high social impact, sort of story, which may help you to charge a higher premium. But the other commercial transactions we are exploring or models is how can direct come to de-risk any investments, like a forward contract. Forward contract can de-risk a lender to look at, okay, if there's a 10-year forward contract, then the lender can use that as a collateral to say, okay, we can issue additional debt. So it's different types of financing being unlocked, not just like a straight purchase revenue that is coming.
Right. Sorry, let me just quickly look. Oh yeah, so and similar to some of the guidance that I heard in the VCM session, um, what is a size that makes sense for, oftentimes distributed energy projects are small. They need to be aggregated often across organizations, like the POAs, that program activities in the VCM to solve this problem. When should someone consider this viable for someone to say it's worth to put it? Project.
No, I mean, that's again a very relevant consideration. So one of the things maybe I didn't highlight well enough is the potential to aggregate. The reason we are doing a distributed rec instrument is because we were in the distributed world, like, because of the sizing, there was not enough volumes. So the sort of aggregation potential of a direct could allow for sizing together. So we are looking at CNI on one side as well, but also pure small rooftop solar, like installations in solar home system type models in pure like rural contexts, for example, how you can aggregate. So I would say, I think if I can't give you a figure, okay, this is kilowatt hour or kilowatt size would be relevant, but as long as there's a potential to aggregate that particular installation or generation along with the others, in that geography, we can bundle that together. It need not be the same developer, as long as the tech and you can prove the provenance that coming from this, this generation is happening. Maybe because that's why we're using distributed ledger. Sizing shouldn't be a huge challenge, and it's just dependent on, we're talking to different types of buyers, in India, in Asia, in Africa, whoever has an interest in that geography, we can work towards that.
Right. And would you say, because we're talking about RECs, which oftentimes are methodologies are easier, especially in most of the typical RE projects, that it's easier to bring projects together in aggregation than maybe in other projects in the VCM market? So it opens up smaller.
Yeah, as long as they have connected systems, I would say, so enable systems. So that's why we are using a distributed ledger to be able to kind of connect and sort of prove that provenance. So it should be easier. I do see a couple of questions which are good, which I should cover, from Anirudh, I think. Do you want to read that out? Or
I'm looking at another one, but which one is Anirudh? Is it who would be the off-taker for the REC certificates? How would local incentives affect direct trading, assuming it's traded nationally or globally? Which is a good question, because I think I heard something about RE, Apple, global, but also you're looking for local buyers. And we, of course, we need to extinguish RECs so they're not double traded.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fundamental question. So, Anirudh, I think direct answer, all the logos you saw on the first slide, they would be the buyers. So basically, all the global corporates we are targeting, I think the key thing is whoever has a footprint in that market, it makes it easier. So let's say a global pharma company who wants to sort of offset their thing, or global tech, giants, whoever, be it we're talking India or Philippines, whoever, or let's say a brewery who has breweries in Africa, so or they have any kind of footprint, it becomes easier for them to do the offsetting. So they would be the off-taker, to answer your question. And local incentives, I think, it's crucial to have, from, I think different governments have given different types of, incentive. In India, there are some, but I think as when it comes to the markets we are focused on, especially Africa or Southeast Asia, there is no such, as such incentive already placed in, from the government or any condition. I think in India the condition was, if you're claiming any environmental market benefit, be it carbon or rec, you can't claim a feed-in tariff, or something like that. So, and I don't know if it's like a voluntary market condition or something else. So I think it's evolving, and this is given this year of COP and all the climate pledge that we are seeing, and the energy, like Google announced the energy compact, with UNDP, and also what we want to do is that market shaping activity at the moment, where we'll be able to kind of guide and direct and steer how multiple levels of impact would be possible.
Right. And you mentioned Africa and Southeast Asia, but I guess South and Southeast Asia both, India and
Yeah. So it's a global market instrument. It could even be used in sort of US domestically. Our mission is to do it more for an impact focus, but and could be any type of impact. But yeah, it's a global instrument that we want to be sort of adopted in any context, in any geography.
Great. And I think you also mentioned it's coming out relatively soon. You're in late stages in program.
Yeah. So what we are trying to do is, which could be relevant to folks here, is have the demand and supply side more figured out. On the demand side, we are talking to different buyers, and if anyone comes to us that, hey, this Coca-Cola, for example, wants to, from their sustainability team, wants to do some sort of, scope to emission addressing, then we can work with them to say, okay, what are the types of, renewable energy projects they would look at. And on the demand side, on the supply side, if any of you, in terms of the audience here, are doing any sort of renewable energy generation, we can register you in our, it's not like a formal register, we're just making a database of, okay, what are the different types of generation happening where, and how can we kind of match you to the interest from the demand side or the buyers. So it's just, we are in that phase of like, seeing what type of projects or pilots makes most sense.
Right. Great.
Super.
I see one last question, although I'm not quite sure. How do local incentives play an unfair advantage? For example, if California offers more incentive to be more competitive, would it be the opposite?
I mean, it's just, I think in US it's quite a different dynamic with the federated structure. They're like, states compete with each other, right, in terms of incentives. And the more incentive for like, renewable energy generation, the better. Even in the REC market there, we have seen like, quite a bit of different level of adoption. I don't think that will be true in the cases of the markets we are considering in South and Southeast Asia or Africa. Like, you don't have that sort of federated, one particular region within a country will have a different structure. So I don't think that's a huge challenge for us, or it would, even if it's there, more incentives help us more in adoption of kind of the instruments. So
Great. I think that's all the questions, and we are coming. We are over time. I think this is great. This is very exciting, especially for a large number of distributed energy developers, as well as some of the innovators who are aggregating or building solutions or get connected to a lot of developers on the ground, like online solar marketplaces and those that support distributed energy projects.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say we would be very happy to help you share, spread the word, get more people to sign up to your informal database, so you get a better picture of the market here in India and South Asia in particular. And if you have more information you want to share with the audience, we can help promote that, as well as the next few months things are taking place.
So I just saw some questions on how to learn more, and also maybe I can share a couple of things. So first is the website for this. I have put it in the chat. Second is we do have on the website there's a sheet if you want to register your project in a way, okay, this is what you're doing. I think someone has put up there what their plan is. Then we can make sure we capture it there, and then you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I can point you to the. So I'm to be clear, from Shell Foundation side, I'm the co-funder of it. Like, we are funding it. We are not. It's being implemented by South Pole and Positive Capital Partner. So I mean, we are just helped kind of put some grant funding along with IFC and the others, and I've been heavily involved in co-design. So I can put you in touch with the relevant people, or any key question I can answer myself, LinkedIn or anything, or on the website also we have some contact information. So yeah, happy to be of help to anyone.
Oh, that's great. And I want to thank you again. I know this is actually your day off, so to give your time on your day off to this community here. Looking forward to seeing how this evolves, and thank you again for your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me, and hope this was of help. And yeah, let's keep the dialogue open.
Great.
Great. Thank you. Okay.